May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. The people of Israel were used to the prophet Jeremiah whining. For 30 chapters, precisely before we get to this verse in chapter 32, Jeremiah warns the people of Israel of danger coming from the Babylonian armies, of God's judgment in the form of attack against the vulnerable people of Israel. And that time has come. The young prophet Jeremiah is put in jail, confined by King Zedekiah, while the Babylonian armies are besieging Jerusalem, as he predicted. The strife that Jeremiah warned about has arrived. During this election season, we might understand these times. Although armies are not knocking down our doors, violence prevails in different ways. Violence in rhetoric and in hate speech, gun violence, the heartbreak of another innocent black or brown person killed by state-sanctioned incompetence, violence in the form of mass incarceration, and that is where you will find the prophet Jeremiah, in prison, his voice still crying out, but at this time he is not whining anymore. He is not complaining. He is not proclaiming that he is moving to Canada and giving up hope on his people if things don't go his way. In these next chapters, after 30 chapters of whining, the prophet Jeremiah enters into what people call the Book of Comfort. Jeremiah changes his tone. He isn't the one warning people to be afraid anymore. People are afraid. His prophetic voice shifts from warning people to a tone of hope, a reminder of the promises of God, of abundant life in a time of violence, a reminder of the covenant that God has with God's people to bless and protect, even and especially in times of strife. The Southern Poverty Law Center, a group that focuses on social justice, has named this past year the year of enormous rage. They have counted hate groups increasing, not just on a presidential platform, but individual hate groups almost tripling this year. The year of enormous rage can infect our hearts, our minds, our souls. This country is having an enormous spiritual crisis right now. And we as church, we need to figure out together how to be together this fall and beyond. Because Lord knows these times are trying. And Lord knows, especially in election seasons, the media, the politics try to pit us against one another. And one of the amazing things about church is that here in this hour and beyond, we get to practice how to be human beings together. We get to pass the peace to each other in a time of violence. We get to lift up the voice of love through Jesus as we see it. We get to approach God together with one voice as we sing together, asking the Spirit of the living God to fall on us together as one. When we do that, we come from all of our scattered places and our differences, and we are joined together in unity, and we get to pray as one. Our New Testament passage from 1 Timothy asks us to pray for our leaders. And Lord knows, if the election goes in a certain way this year for any one of us, that praying will be hard. It will challenge our hearts. But we have this community to remind us that we get to practice how to be human beings together when it seems like basic morality is failing in a public way. Valerie Carr, who is a lawyer, a documentary filmmaker, and an activist, says that the way we make change is just as important as the change we make. That if we start to embody the feelings of dysfunction, of fear, of anger, of fatigue, and stress, we put those very dysfunctions back into the world, when those are the very things we are trying to heal in the world. She goes on to say, people are always trying to respond to the latest crisis, the latest moral outrage, and we are longing for a different way to fight, a different way to make change, a different way to be together. And she says that the ethic of love, as an invisible force, can make us brave in these times, to go out into the world from all of our diverse places, from all of the agreements and disagreements that we have, to act in love. And that kind of love is revolutionary. And that kind of love is the only thing that can create lasting change. She asks, what would it mean to make love a public ethic for life in the next 25 years? She says, the civil rights era was the last time we had love as a public ethic, and hate right now is so incredibly strong. We are longing for languages that are just as potent to respond to that love. So I want to be real with you for a minute, and I want to continue this conversation in second hour. I want to be really asking you right now, how much do you want to hear about politics during the election season in this sanctuary? I want to propose that we don't speak the names of the candidates in this space. I want to propose that this place is a place of reprieve from the election season. And if you wholeheartedly agree with me or disagree with me, I want to hear about it. Come and lift your voice in second hour. Bring your opinions to me. Jesus was political. I'm not saying that Christians ought not to care about politics, but in this time of enormous rage, the way that we make change is just as important as the change we make. And the public political voice of Christians has become so skewed and so narrowed in the world that this country has come to believe that all Christians care about publicly is a woman's right to choose, prayer in the school, and not selling wedding cakes to gay and lesbian people getting married. And that makes me angry. And it makes me want to scream louder than them. But what if we embodied an ethic of love? What if we, like Jesus, did and cared for poverty as Christians? Jesus was a healer. What if we cared about health care as Christians in the public sphere? You don't hear any Christian voices there. What about basic equity? That all human beings should be treated equally. This is good news straight from the gospel, that the poor shall be lifted up. But in our current political scene, if we become an echo chamber of that, no one would know that we're Christian in this space. So I want to suggest that today, instead of being angry and afraid in this political season, and trust me, there is much to be angry and afraid about.
That's true.
What if instead our politics were a public expression of love, not anger and fear? And I admit to you, I don't know exactly what that looks like. And I need you to help show me what love looks like in public. Because whichever politician is elected to be our next president, we will still need to do the healing work of love and justice from this place in the world. And our task as Christians, as summarized by Jesus, he says, "You shall love the Lord your God." Love. With all your heart and your soul and with all of your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And on these two commandments hang all the law of the prophets. And in this time, when we are tempted to turn against each other because of politics, when we're tempted to buy into fear rhetoric, we are asked, no matter what our beliefs and religious background are, now more than ever to live out a public ethic of love. The Reverend Dr. William Barber, has anyone heard of him lately? Yes. He's from a United Church of Christ church in North Carolina, and he has been making waves all over the country, proclaiming that our country needs a moral movement, that we need to shock the heart of this nation because we have a heart problem. Love is not expressed in public, and we people, we need to become the defibrillators. He says we need to shock the heart of the nation and bring love back into the world. Barber calls for a moral movement, not a democratic movement, not a Republican movement, but a movement of love, of fairness, of equity, that takes the Christian ethic of caring for the least of these among us and helping to make sure the law and culture reflects that love and care for everyone, no exceptions. So I ask us, church, today and in this time of visioning, what would it mean for you, for us, from this place, from this sanctuary, right now in Middletown today, to covenant with each other to let love reign? In this year of enormous rage, what would it mean to make loving kindness not just a word or a religious concept, but to come alive among us? This is the task of being a Jesus follower, of being a Christian. What if we made love our public ethic? What if we were intentional about being love, starting from this place? I urge you all, today after church, to go into the parish hall and to find that confusing orange bulletin board that Kurt talked about, and it is not so confusing. I invite you to sign up for a small group that meets during 6 consecutive weeks this fall. Now, this has been framed as a visioning project, and it is one. But the goal of this is to change the world starting from this place through relationships with each other. By coming together in small groups this fall, we are lifting up an ethic of relationality, an ethic of unity, of love and of hope in a world that tries so desperately to separate us, and a world that needs so desperately to hear this. And during this time, this fall, I invite you to commit to being in worship on Sunday, to practice being together while the world tries to separate, to practice being in small groups and praying together, to amplify your service and your relationships with people, to be made brave with love, not afraid and angry with the political rhetoric that we will be hearing. These small groups are going to meet over 6 weeks in a very charged time. These 6 weeks will encompass the next presidential election. During these 6 weeks, we will talk about truths that are everlasting, not that change every 4 years. We will determine how we want to be church, to be community, to be loving people in this age. And that my friends, is an act of resistance to the fear and the violence and the hate. The prophet Jeremiah, while in prison, calling for nonviolence while Jerusalem is under siege, in an act of hope for the future, buys land and takes a great deal of detail and care to describe that transaction. He carefully describes the deed for the piece of land that was bought for 17 shekels and that was exchanged and sealed, witnessed, weighed in public in a very intentional way. For us, this public act of having hope in the future will be getting together, committing, covenanting with this community while the political forces of our time do everything to keep us separate, lonely, in competition, and apart. So let us work to come together with intention, this radical work of showing up and having faith in God's future together is the work of love and resistance. The Reverend Dr. Patrick Duggan wrote, "There is something intensely pure and loving about a focus on staying in relationship when so many things divide and separate. There is something otherworldly about love that chooses to love when tolerance is good enough or hatred is socially acceptable, when everyone in a relationship like us shares this intentionality to be all in no matter what. It sounds like a marriage. And indeed, that is the heart of covenant." During our second hour today, we will hear our covenant that this church's foundation rests on, written 348 years ago, in 1668, before any official U.S. government documents were written. This church was trying to understand how to live together under the government of the Gospels. Walking with God and strengthened by Christ, these people of this congregation, our forefathers and mothers, over 300 years ago had the wisdom that the rules of the gospel ought to be the way we live in the world, the ethic of love, I might add. So let us truly walk together with this God and one with another according to the rules of the gospel, and let God's holy will be made known on earth, like our covenant urges. And let us carefully perform these tasks of being together through the grace and strength of Christ. Jeremiah, the prophet, does not leave his people in fear and in violence. He proclaims from prison to a land that seems barren and to a people without hope. He says, "Houses and fields and vineyards shall be bought again in this land." Let us know that for this place, that for this country, for this church, for our own hearts and lives, and for the places of hurt in the world, that houses and fields and vineyards shall be bought again on this land. There will be bounty. There will be life abundant. This is the covenant God has with us through Christ by the grace of God, if we make it so through love. The way we make change is just as important as the change we make. Let us embody love together, to let loving kindness come alive in this world. Will you help me do this, church?
Absolutely.
Let us do this together. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.